What's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day to you. Joey Mulinaro. I'm Kevin Bowen. Free agency, 3.5 hours away. 12:30. The fireworks are kind of already begun, Joey. And that's something that they haven't really begun here in Indianapolis, of course, but it's a little surprise that I have based off past years in free agency. I don't remember this much reported activity during the legal tampering window, which started Monday at noon, and now 48 hours later, it seems like virtually every semi-big name is off the board.
All the ones we talked about in Kevin's Corner are gone, whether it be Andrew Norwell, Dion Lewis, even a little bit of Malcolm Butler.
Both the wideouts, Allen Robinson, Sammy Watkins.
You got it on that. Even Nate Solder went this morning to the New York Giants, I saw. So all the names it seems like you brought up during the podcast are seemingly off the board.
And like positions of need for the Colts.
Right.
We talk about wideout and Robinson and Watkins. Sorry if the lighting's a little bad, guys. It looks well. There you go.
Try it that way.
There you go. Perfect. We got the circle in the background here at MS Communications. But like I said, wideouts, Robinson and Watkins, those are probably the two top-end guys of that position group. You just mentioned Norwell going to Jacksonville. Sounds like Nate Solder to the Giants. That's probably the top tackle, top guard. Inside linebacker, Anthony Hitchens was that popular name, and we saw him go to Kansas City. I do think there are a couple options left on the O-line and inside linebacker. Wideout, you'd really be kind of scratching, just clawing to find a guy. It's like Terrell Pryor, Jordan Matthews,
Mike
Wallace, maybe Jordy Nelson, but Nelson turns 33 in May. So basically,
how about Dante Moncrief?
Yeah, Dante Moncrief. Yeah, with the Jags. I've seen anywhere from like 7 to 10 million. I know Jason Lockenfor reported 10 million with incentives for Dante Moncrief. I've also seen 7 million out of Field Yates from ESPN. But yeah, Dante Moncrief staying in the division, and we just kind of want to do a mini little. This is kind of our version of the podcast, just because we feel like if we recorded an hour-long podcast right now,
it wouldn't be possible because nothing's happened.
Well, that and it wouldn't be worth it 20 minutes later because something always happens. And while we're doing this Facebook Live, I don't have Twitter open. I don't have my phone on me. I'm sure there's going to be some news to break here in the next 10, 15 minutes that we do this. So we're kind of going to go over our thoughts on the Colts, free agency as a whole, and just what has kind of transpired. And Joey, I wanted to mention I put out a poll earlier today.
Yep.
You've got it up. Mm-hmm. Let everybody know what that poll is.
Yeah, so Kevin tweeted, Colts fans, your early thoughts on free agency and how quiet they've reportedly been. 3 options here. First one, happy, free agency is dangerous. Second one is mad, the draft won't cure all. And the third is no panic, it's still early. And right now there's 1,900 votes.
Okay.
And no panic, still early is leading the way with 57%. Mad, and because the draft won't cure all, is second and 32%, and then happy is only 11% of the vote.
I'm maybe a little bit surprised by how the no panic, how high that is. I expected kind of almost a split between no panic and the draft won't cure all. Mm-hmm. The free agency is dangerous. I think that's kind of a misconception. It's something that maybe in years past it has been more dangerous, but there are teams that have spent pretty substantially in free agency in recent years and found playoff success.
Yep. Something
that I posted at 1070thefan.com last week. And we saw, I think, 6 of the top 10 spenders in free agency last year went on to make the playoffs. So I think there might be a negative stereotype with free agency in that is not totally true. And I thought how the Colts should attack free agency this year was we saw how much quantity Chris Ballard had last year and just trying to totally revamp that defensive side of the ball, sprinkling in a few guys on offense. I thought it was you have 70+ million, you go and tack that top end of the free agency board. Try to get the Norwells, try to get the Watkins, those type of talents, and you can get a need or two in free agency, still have plenty of cap room to carry over into 2019, and then focus on your main building during the draft.
Yeah. Well, maybe Chris Ballard's saying that if I don't sign anybody, then expectations can't be let down. So going that route,
the bar is set very low. I mean, it is weird to me that and again, he could still be very active, but it doesn't look like it's going to be very high-end act.
Right.
It's going to be kind of just B-level, C-level signings, if you will, similar to last year, I think is how it's going to be. And I thought they should have been different in that you had the resources this year to go spend at a relatively high level and getting some Pro Bowl-ish type players.
Well, that's what's interesting, Kevin, is that I remember a couple weeks back when Chris Ballard was on with JMB, and he straight up said, we need 10 starters. We need 10-plus starters. And then all of a sudden, these first few days of the tampering, you're not hearing anything.
Yeah.
You have to wonder a little bit, right?
And I think it's twofold. One is Chris Ballard's philosophy in that he firmly believes that this team has to be built through the draft. And with free agency, he does not think that A-level money deserves to go to B-level players. Now, I just think free agency has evolved to where you have to spend that type of money to have any sort of production or just any sort of viable options to find out of free agency. You have to pay a little bit. That's just how the salary cap continues to rise. And I know some of these deals are scary, like Nate Solder is getting how much money, Andrew Norwell is getting how much money, but in 2 to 3 years, those guys will be, middle of the pack at their position group. I think that's something to keep in mind as well, is how the cycle of free agency rolls around. That is what these deals are going to look totally different 2 and 3 years down the road. Like Kirk Cousins is the highest paid quarterback in the league.
Yep.
In 3 years, he's going to be, middle of the pack or somewhere around there. And I also think something to keep in mind, Joe, and I see we're getting tons of comments. We appreciate you all tuning in. We'll get to some of those. Do free agents want to come here?
Apparently not.
Yeah, I think that is a legit question. It was rumored that the Colts wanted to go after Norwell, wanted to go after Watkins. And that's something to keep in mind, is how attractive is the situation. My belief in free agency has kind of always been money talks, right? Like eventually the highest bidder is going to get players. I do think if deals are very similar, you get it to where you saw in 2015 where Frank Gore was like, no, Philly, I'm going to Indy because they're ready to win a Super Bowl. And maybe you do have people looking at the Colts situation and thinking to themselves, I don't know about Luck. I don't know about this free agent situation there of, okay, if I go there, they're immediately win now. Yeah. And look at the AFC South. Jacksonville is making moves. Tennessee is making moves with Deion Lewis and Malcolm Butler. Houston has even, I think, added a couple of guys as well. And right now, again, it's early, but it just doesn't look like the Colts have closed that gap in the AFC South at all.
Now, even without the Colts being active in free agency, other teams around them that you mentioned how does that affect them in terms of these next few days of free agency, but then also the draft? I mean, because you think about a team like Cleveland. They're picking up a few interesting positions that you would say that's where they're going to in the draft. How does that affect the Colts?
We saw Carlos Hyde go to the Browns. We saw – did the Giants get Jonathan Stewart?
Giants got Jonathan Stewart and Nate Solder this morning. Yeah.
Okay. I don't think that totally eliminates either of those teams from the Saquon Barkley sweepstakes. Carlos Hyde is a pretty significant signing. He's going to be one of the top running backs to go off the board here in the next few days. And I do think Cleveland is in a position where they could go 1 quarterback, and then 4, they can go Quentin Nelson, and then have just an unbelievable offensive line. Have built some nice pass catching options for whoever their starting quarterback is going to be, whether that's Tyrod Taylor or it's the Sam Darnold, whoever they take at 1. And then they obviously have a guy like Carlos Hyde. So I'm curious still to see what Cleveland is going to do. I still think New York is a favorite to take Barkley. I mean, Jonathan Stewart is not running for much longer. And like you said, Joey, they've started to rebuild this offensive line. They were in the mix for Norwell. And that's something that they had to get better. So I do think one thing with this, Joey, is, and I posted this on TitsToTheFan.com yesterday, the Kirk Cousins move to Minnesota, I think really helps the Colts.
Why is that?
Because we never looked at Minnesota as a team willing to trade in the top 5 to get a quarterback. We did that with the Jets, the Broncos, maybe the Cardinals, maybe the Bills. And now all of a sudden you see the Bills go from 21 to 12.
They're going to try to up that even more?
Yeah, I think that. And in the Kirk Cousins article, it's on TitsToTheFan.com. At the bottom, I propose 5 trades of the quarterback-needy teams and what sort of packages the Colts could be getting back. So if you're looking for specific packages, that is something to definitely check out. Because I do think the Colts are in a mode right now, Joey, where I thought my kind of attack to the offseason, if I were Chris Ballard, would have been 1 to 2 needs in free agency, kind of like an O-lineman, re-sign Melvin, get a wideout, I guess I'm going like 2 to 3 needs, maybe even 4.
Is there any update on Melvin?
Oakland seems to be a team out there, but right now, I was told maybe that could have happened last night.
Okay.
Melvin to Oakland, but here we are a little bit over 3 hours away. And look, some of those corners have got some fat deals so far. Butler, Tremaine Johnson. So I'm curious to see what Melvin is going to look like. But that's kind of how I would have handled things was 2 to 3 needs in free agency. Again, you still have 30-ish million to push over to 2019. And then you don't put that much pressure on the draft. Now, I think you're in a position where you trading back almost makes more sense to me than anything, because I think you haven't really done that much need-wise with totally crossing those needs off the list.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you signed Jonathan Hankins last year, that need was crossed off the list.
Right.
I don't think you clearly aren't there. You haven't signed anyone yet. And right now, trading back from 3 and getting those packages to where you have 5, 6 picks in the first 2 or 3 rounds, that makes a lot of sense to me. That's where I think Kirk Cousins going to Minnesota helps you, because if you went to like the Jets or the Bills or somebody else, that was a team you thought was going to trade up. We never thought Minnesota was going to trade in the top 5.
Right.
So should we read some comments?
Yeah, let's do it. What we got?
All right, what do we got here? Hunter.
Do you think Moncrief getting paid that much is what he's worth, or is it too high?
Everything is too high at some degree in free agency. And we talked about Hunter, 7 to 10 million. If it's 10 million straight up base for a 1-year deal, that's insane for Dante Moncrief. If it's 7, I understand that. And look at Jacksonville. I mean, they're thinking to themselves how the Colts thought in 2015.
We're 1 play away.
We are one. Like, look at Philadelphia last year with Alshon Jeffrey. Now, Jeffrey, I think, is at a higher level than Moncrief was, of course, after his first 3 or 4 seasons in the league. But that offensive line looks like one of the best in football right now. And they were already the number 1 run game last year. And now you have Fournette. Moncrief should have some favorable situations on the outside. He's going to be one of their top pass-catching options. And it's something that I'm going to write later this week. We don't talk about it very often that, like, oh, my gosh, a Colts free agent is leaving and he could be a superior player elsewhere. You have that feeling with Moncrief.
You've been on that since, like, November.
He's 24. He's incredibly athletic. When Luck was healthy, the guy produced.
Yep.
I mean, coming into the season, we thought it was a definite that he would be back as a second contract guy. And outside circumstances certainly played into his lack of production, and Moncrief didn't do himself any favors. Had a huge drop down in Tennessee, cost really maybe the Colts getting a huge road win. You could argue he half-assed it on some routes. But I just think Moncrief is that one guy, in the last decade or 2, name Colts free agents that have gone elsewhere and produced. It's like Pierre Garçon and maybe Antoine Bethea. And, that's it. Nobody goes elsewhere. I think Moncrief could be that guy.
How about that one?
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Brandon's not liking the Cubs head. Yanks, they'll be fun to watch in the American League.
You always
I can pull for that, but yeah, Cubs guy through and through. James, though, this will be interesting. How many picks could we get from Buffalo if we trade down with them?
So, James, check out that story, like I said, on 1070thefan.com. Buffalo's got a lot of picks in the 2nd and 3rd round, and
does it kind of affect, though? I mean, you were kind of wanting to get the 21 and 22, Cincinnati got?
Well, I still think you can get 22. So what you would do is you trade back from 3 to 12, and you'd get 12, 22, and then based off a trade value chart, which every NFL team has in their war room, technically, numbers-wise, the Colts' number 30 pick is worth 2,200 points. Not to get crazy draft trade technical, but the 3rd round pick would add up to 2,200 points when you add the 12th pick, the 22nd pick, and then the 3rd round pick.
Yeah.
Now, the Colts could sweeten the package a little bit to where, hey, all these teams want to trade up. We need you to give us one of your 2nd round picks.
Okay.
So that's what you would kind of be looking at with Buffalo moving back to 12. And I think that's something where you have to weigh right now is it Bradley Chubb or Saquon Barkley at 3? Or is Chris Ballard we've got to hit on so many draft picks? That is what it's going to come down to. And honestly, we will have no idea what those trade packages really look like until 2 minutes to go when the Colts are on the clock with that number 3 pick.
Kevin Costner draft day moves.
Draft day moves.
Quick on the trigger. What about I just saw one. Kind of
scroll down too far?
Yeah, maybe. But then, some of the names now, after we've seen, kind of tampering go on and where some guys are likely heading, what's the second or third tier? Who can we expect the next couple of days?
Yeah, wideout-wise, I mentioned, Jordan Matthews, Terrell Pryor, Jordy Nelson. I think he's just too old. Mike Wall. I mean, don't all these names sound like Donnie Avery and Darius Hayward-Bay and Akeem Nicks?
If it was 2010, this would be really good. But
right.
Mike Wallace and Jordy Nelson aren't cutting it right
exactly.
now.
Exactly. They're not. So I just think, you missed out maybe on a Paul Richardson or Marquise Lee. And, look, I understand you're going to have to overpay for these guys, but that's free agency. To make any sort of headway, you almost have to overpay. So I think wideout now becomes a huge need in the draft.
Well,
so,
they only have 2 on the roster.
2 on the roster that have caught a ball last year. You got some no-names guys. Exactly. I mean, you got some no-name guys, but in terms of 53-man roster locks, you don't even have a Kamar Aiken. He's a free agent here in a little over 3 hours. Inside linebacker, Preston Brown is still out there. I know he's a name from Buffalo that some people like.
Again, just kind of plug and play. Not
special. Because my thinking was for agency was, okay, enough of the DeQuell Jacksons, the John Bostics, the Kamar Aikens, the Brian Schwenkes, the Todd Hermans.
Let's go get it.
You've kind of tried to duct tape some of these massive holes. It's like putting duct tape over these potholes in Indianapolis right now. No, we need cement, serious cement. I don't know if that's the correct term, but we need anything to fill those freaking potholes. But again, Joey, it's not a lot of top-end guys here in the coming weeks. Yash, this guy always throws in a question, I think, to Kevin's Corner. Thanks to this KB. What are some names you might like to Indy? Again, right now there's not a lot. Ryan Jensen, did you see that, Joey, the Baltimore O-lineman? He supposedly will be visiting here in the coming days. That's the first reported visit. 16 starts last year as the center in Baltimore, has been a starting guard there.
Okay. I was going to say.
So I think that's where he would play guard, obviously, with Ryan Kelly. The question is, though, you look at his resume, and I do think I've read enough about Jensen and studied up about him. I do think that people are pretty high on him, more high than Brian Schwenke last year, but their stats are eerily similar, and Brian Schwenke never even made the 53-man roster. So,
gotcha. When are we thinking for another Kevin's Corner? Maybe get on there.
I think Monday, and it's just kind of a waste to record one in the next couple of days. So that's why we wanted to do this. If something crazy happens, Joey, you and I will both hop in. But I'm thinking Monday just to recap things. And again, Chris Ballard's going to be patient. Last year, he signed Simon Sheard and Jeff Locke all on the second day of free agency. The only activity on the first day was that Dwayne Allen trade became official.
Okay.
So yeah, Scotty, you wearing the Tiger Woods Wednesday walkthrough outfit? This does kind of look like Tiger a little bit.
You Tiger guy?
Oh my God!
Big weekend for you last weekend?
It doesn't even begin to describe that I'm a Tiger. I'm obsessed. Borderline stalkerish, honestly.
Everybody's got their guy.
Yeah, big week this week in Bay Hill for the favorite.
Here we go from Brett. Obviously, we can't let Melvin and Desir walk at this point, right?
That's something that, yes, you cannot let both of them walk. I would be surprised if Melvin came back. I just think that how we've seen Ballard react to some of these deals and what the cornerback market's looking like. I mean, I think Butler and Tremaine Johnson were 15 and 12 mil.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a ton. We thought Melvin kind of in the 8 to 10 range. For him,
Butler was 30 of it guaranteed or 25 of it guaranteed.
Huge guarantee there. And so, I always thought when Melvin signed with Rosenhaus, you would have to be willing to spend a little bit. I'm curious to see what that market. But right now, Melvin and Desir, I mean, outside of that, Joey, Muhort, I think, becomes more of a bring-back candidate just because you haven't done much on the O-line.
Martin's wanting to know what you're doing for St. Patty's.
Any plans for St. Patty's?
Going off of that?
Not really. I mean, I'll be watching some ball. I think I'm going on with the producer show on Saturday, joining them for a segment.
Yeah.
And, I'm all NCAA tournament. What do we got? I got Pacers, I think, Saturday night as well, the Wizards.
I'm on that game.
And then Tiger. God, I love Tiger.
Yeah, that's great. You'll be wearing the red and black on Sunday?
Oh, yeah. I'm all red. I was red last Sunday at church, man. Randy asked, how about those Pacers? Let's throw in a little Pacers talk.
Yeah,
what a win last night. I mean, that was a fun atmosphere to watch.
Like a playoff game for sure.
And that's a possible matchup, a 3-6, Pacers-Sixers in the first round. I would love that. Selfishly, I love watching Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons and to see, one of the future teams of the Eastern Conference. it's impressive to me, Joey, how they are winning. Like, Victor struggles so much last night. Boyan struggles so much last night. You can't hit a 3 to save your life. Like, this is 17 straight. And boom, there's Miles Turner playing a little bully ball. And that's something that we've talked about, that I always thought the ceiling for the Pacers was kind of win one round. Mm-hmm. But if Turner starts being like this, and he's done it for about 2 weeks now, like, this is more than just 2 nights in a row.
Yeah.
This has been Turner since the All-Star break, and he was very candid. I posted this on 1070thefan.com. Just he had kind of a self-evaluation All-Star break of like, okay, I'm 6'11".
Act like it.
Like, yes, I have a great jump shot, and that's a great asset. But when it's needed, be a guy that can impose your will in the paint. And
right.
So, yeah, I think the Pacers have maybe tapped into something that we didn't think they had here in 2017, 2018. So, big one tomorrow night. That'll be fun atmosphere over Bankers Life.
Could be fun with Joel Embiid and Lance Stevenson in round 1, too.
I would love
a lot of antics.
Him and a lot of antics between those two. Him and Simmons got into it last night. I thought it was big that Lance played better than he had been, because his antics had kind of gotten to him. Mm-hmm. So we'll be on here for a couple more minutes. If you have any last-minute questions, send them in, but we wanted to give you a little lunchtime kind of free agency Colts chatter.
Dennis coming in. Any news on Cameron Fleming?
So Cameron Fleming, those will recall a few years back when the Patriots came here and Jonas Gray ran all over the Colts.
Yeah.
Cameron Fleming was the tackle eligible for New England all night long. Like, there was just 6 offensive linemen. He was the extra whatever tight end. And, Fleming, similar to you threw out the name Chris Hubbard a few weeks ago, the Pittsburgh lineman who kind of was maybe like a Joe Wrights, you would call them, kind of like that swing tackle that like was your six lineman. And then, remember Wrights got a nice 3-year deal from Indy. Hubbard got a huge deal from Cleveland.
Because he filled in a lot of last year. So starting,
So Fleming is kind of what I think some people believe like he is due for that starting role. So I think right now you would be in the market for a guy like Cameron Fleming. So that's a name I think to watch coming up here.
What about Toby? You think LeBron will leave in Cleveland?
Ooh, do I think LeBron will leave Cleveland in free agency this year? Wow. Yeah, I do. I don't know. Gosh. I said that kind of confidently, and now I'm like, why did I say that?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I want to see how this last month or two plays out. Like, who? I don't know. I don't know what that young core looks like. They still have Brooklyn's pick, right?
Yes, they didn't trade.
They got to hope that. Yeah, no, they didn't trade that away. They got to hope that cashes in. I mean, if you hit the lottery there and get Ayton or Bagley or Luka Doncic or whoever that kid is.
Would be nice to see him go out west for once.
Yeah, I mean, for the Pacers' sake. I mean, how many times has LeBron ended the Pacers season in the playoffs? At least 3, maybe more than that.
Yep.
What else do we got here?
Hunter, if we trade back and get picks 12, 22, and more, do you think the Colts should draft Calvin Ridley?
You know what? If you'd asked me that 3 weeks ago, I would have said hell no.
Yeah, me too.
But, like, wideout is a need, Joey. Yeah. And we haven't talked about it enough. And when you look at wideouts in the draft, it's like Ridley, Cortland Sutton out of SMU, and then it really drops off. You've mentioned the LSU guy.
Sharkey, he's hopping up.
Who led
4-3.
Right, yeah, I think he had the top 40 of any wideout. But outside of that, there's just not a lot of, like, guaranteed – first-round picks out of the wideout group in 2018. And that's another reason why I thought that you needed to go out and spend a little bit in free agency. So, that is a name to watch. Yash throws in Jack Mewhort. Thoughts now with Norwell not an option? I mean, yeah, I do think that's an option, but there's an injury question. You have to get some depth there, and that's where this Jensen guy comes into play. If he's able to visit, I think Tampa is his other visit, and then sign here, he could be an option. So, Joey, just kind of wrapping up. I am not surprised by the Colts' lack of activity because Chris Ballard is so steadfast in his beliefs.
Mm-hmm. But when you have that money, I mean, you got to at least.
To me, you have so many needs on this roster. You cannot put that much pressure on your draft.
Yeah.
And again, it's twofold. It's Ballard's maybe lack of willingness to overpay in free agency, and then like we just said, we don't know if these guys even wanted to come here. That's a legitimate question we have to ask, is that you're the worst team in your division, and there's no signs that you're closing that gap in the immediate future. I'm just afraid that this sort of attack, you're putting so much pressure on the draft, and then you're putting so much pressure on Andrew Luck.
That's what I was about to say. Do you think at all there's any sort of talk about that kind of shooing those guys away?
I don't, because I think if there was talk of that, we would hear it.
Yeah.
You know, that would be spreading to NFL circles, and that would be leaking elsewhere. So, you know, that's a question that I think we have to ask. This isn't 2015 or even 2013 where, you know, their players are dying to come here and play with Andrew Luck. I think that it's important you're changing systems on defense and offense. Don't you want to give your new coaching staff some pieces to work with? You know, I never viewed D-line as a huge, huge need in the offseason, but then some people wanted to talk about that as a big need, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. If you aren't comfortable with some of these players switching to a 4-3, you might need to go out and get a Starlo Tulele or a Muhammad Wilkerson. I don't know if is he even a fit in a 4-3, but some of Dontari Poe, you know, some of those names out there.
Right.
So yeah, free agency starts in 3 hours officially. So all those trades will go through, and I mean, who knows? Maybe we got some Josh McDaniels people out there. You know, I mean, what if?
We could hope.
What if? That would stir up a little news. Moncrief to Jacksonville. Frank Gore to the visiting the Lions. But right now on the horizon, doesn't look like much.
No, and you kind of hope for Frank Gore that maybe he'd go to somebody a little bit closer than Detroit, right?
You know, the Lions were 32nd in rushing offense last year. I get like they almost made the playoffs, and they have kind of a rotation there with Riddick and Abdullah, but I thought that he would be more kind of, I don't know, more of a dominant O-line.
I'm with you. So Monday
we'll be back. Let's hit these 3 quick questions before we head off. Brett, what about Terrell Pryor? I mean, I don't love it, Joey, but
big body comes with the right price.
I mean, he kind of had a Moncrief type of year, like severely underwhelmed with a quarterback that he never had in Cleveland. So, but you're getting to that point where no matter what wideout you get, assuming you get a wideout, there's questions. Like the Wallace, Jordy Nelson, there's questions about ages. So yeah, Gilberto. Do the draft. If they trade back to get to 12, Chubb won't be there and Patrick's still problem. That's the question you have, Joey, is if you don't take Chubb at 3 and you want to trade back, how are you evaluating those other prospects? What do you think of Marcus Davenport? What do you think of Arden Key? Mm-hmm. What do you think of Harold Landry?
And it's almost like we talked about when you have a pick that's that high. You know, you don't every 5-10 years or so get a pick at number 3 or number 5. Take advantage of that and get a game changer, you hope.
And that was one of my big arguments on spending a little in free agency, so you don't force your hand in the draft of needing to trade back.
Yep.
I mean, right now, if the draft were tonight and like all these free agency moves we've seen reported so far, if they all went through and the Colts made nothing of significance, I would be team trade back. And I know that's a lot to pass up on a Bradley Chubb, but now the needs are there. 2 alignment, at least 1 wideout, probably 2. A corner, either re-sign Melvin or go out and find somebody, inside linebacker, maybe a D lineman, running back. Obviously, we haven't even really talked about running back, but a lot of those names are off the board. Some people wanted Deion Lewis or Jerick McKinnon. Maybe Rex Burkhead is in the mix. So, Randy, any news on Luck? Back in the building, it sounds like in April, or back, I think, somewhat soon, actually, to check in with the doctors. But off-season program, April 9th. Voluntary minicamp the 24th. That's the date I have circled. April 24th, will Andrew Luck be throwing? We won't see him in a public setting throw the ball between now and then.
If it helps at all, I did have a dream last night that Andrew Luck was back week 1, full-fledged, going. So I don't know what that means, but we can hope.
You heard it here first, right here. Kevin Bowen Facebook page, Joey Mulinaro. Letting you in on his dreams. That's a scary, scary road to go down. But we'll wrap it up. If you guys have any other questions, either leave a comment here on the Facebook page, and we'll answer it, or hit me up on Twitter. But, yeah, 3 hours till free agency. Enjoy it.